Hello again, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Noble Father podcast. I am your host, Theophilus. Today is October the 21st of 2024, and there's no day like today, and so live it like it's the last one. This week has been a very long week. I've had a lot of things happen. Playing with my daughter yesterday, a little rough, I guess, with her, and she ended up kneeing me in the chin, causing me to chip a tooth. And so this instantly gave me, something to think about and talk about, right? You don't know what you're missing until you lose it. My teeth were smooth before I played with my daughter, and then after, I now have this unstoppable urge to use my tongue to rub the chip. And it's never going to be the same again. You just realize that even the smoothness of teeth is something that you can really miss. And so things around you, like being able to breathe, being able to walk, being able to stand, whatever it is, enjoy it. Enjoy it while you can, and you really slow down. That's one of the things about life, is you don't realize what you have until you lose it. This week also had a men's retreat at my church, and it was one that the main topic was talking about no regrets, right? Very similar to the chip in the tooth. You live life with no regret, being present, and the main thing was, the pastor started sharing. Pastor Dwayne started talking about how we are all a small K king, right? We have a kingdom that we've been given. Manager has given us assets to steward and to take care of and to multiply. And this realization as fathers is that we are a priority, and utmost priority. One of the things you'll see me harp on a lot, and people ask me all the time about Noble Fathers of the work, is like, what is the single biggest problem that you see in fathers, and what would really help them in their walk, is like understanding how big of a priority they are. And so, the king, the saying goes, people like to say, happy wife, happy life, right? I believe in that, but the truth is, happy king, happy kingdom as well. And so, it was an amazing experience getting to grow with men, and be surrounded by men of similar paths, of similar faith, and I'm invested in them, they're invested in me, and really that's what Noble Father work is all about. We've also been in the search for a secondary vehicle, and I do have good news to report. We found one that kind of fit what we were looking for, fit within our budget, and but man, there's a lot of things that need to be done on the vehicle, and that's been a roller coaster in itself. We're trying to. I thought I'd found a really good set of wheels and tires. Went out to go pick it up. Came back. Had a friend come over to try to put them on the vehicle, and lo and behold, they don't fit. And so and this presents itself another life lesson, right? Is that, when things don't fit, you try to go make it fit, and you're trying to squint around, a square peg into a round hole, and it doesn't work. And, this measurement doesn't work, and this thread pitch doesn't work, and this bore doesn't work. And, when you try to make something work and you're trying to force it, it's crap, right? And now we've gotten to the point where chances are I'll have to sell the set and figure out how to get the right fitment. Just based on safety. There's just so many things about this whole journey that's been amazing. But, no regrets, really, right? No regrets that this purchase has brought, people into our lives that we, otherwise had no, mutual likes. And, even the person who sold us the vehicle, a relationship with them that I never would have imagined that I would have with somebody of that age, right? Young kid. And so no regrets. God is growing us. God is teaching us new things through the littlest things, right? From fitments of vehicles, through a chip in the tooth, through a retreat, right? And all the timing of it. And we had to get our 12-volt battery on our Tesla changed as well. And, the timing of that is just very, very suspicious, right? It's, people would say coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in a God, a creator, an intelligent creator who orchestrates things for his will to be done. And that has been true in my life. And I hope you really open your eyes to seeing that. Today's episode, I want to talk about something that came up in an elders meeting. One of our members, his name is Doug, got to share about something, and it's called the S-curve of growth. And I think it's just so interesting. It's something that, could be applied to business and definitely has a business application, but can also be applied to our lives. Noble Father is one in which wanting to help fathers grow, wanting to help fathers open up and be the best that they can be, right? Be the priority, be the leader, be the king of the kingdom. Right. And so learning and using these different principles and these concepts to learn and grow is something that, hey, maybe it impacts you. And I like you to think about how this could impact you. This episode, if you're listening on the audio, I would recommend that you pause right here and go and find us on YouTube. And watch it, because I'm going to be throwing up some images. It's going to be this infographic from a company called Rocket Source, and it's just an infographic of the S curve of growth. And I definitely think that you should watch it, because then you can see the graphs and the imagery, because it's very interesting. The imagery of it. Obviously I'm going to go to describe it verbally as well, but to really get the whole gist of it, I think you definitely should go and watch it on YouTube. And so I'm going to change my screen here. And so you're going to see the S-curve of infographic, right? I'm just going to re-center some stuff here. Awesome. So this is the S-curve of business. They call it S-curve of business, but I'm going to call it of growth, because we're not applying this solely to business. You can apply it to business. You can apply it to life. You can apply it to anything, a child's development, whatever it is you want. So you can see from this infographic, it says the S-curve of business, the timeless cycle of growth. So that can be applied to everything, right? Not just business. But in this, it's going to be of business itself. And so I'm going to go to the top here. So there's a graph. There's an X and Y axis, right? And so I believe the Y axis, which is the one that's standing up, is growth. And in duration, there's one that's for time. And so as time progresses, right, growth, inevitably, hopefully, if you're doing life right, you are living this life of growth, right? You're not stagnating. And so from as close to the X and Y as you can imagine, there's a point that's a start. And just picture it. Why is it called an S? Because the trajectory of the curve, it goes upward as time goes, and it just, at some point, growth is really, really high, and then you start to scale, and then it matures and kind of just plateaus, right? And that's why it's called an S curve. So, you have the start, right, wherever you're at in life, and you can figure out where you are on this walk, right? So let's just use myself as an example, my trajectory of fatherhood, where I am presently in my growth. I'd probably say I'm probably around this scale area, right? So I'm about like 3/4 of the way on the journey. I'm kind of reaching this maturity point. And, at some point, you're going to mature to a point where there's a drop off, or you will start to plateau, and you get as close to the top, and it just doesn't go up anymore. Your growth is so small and minuscule that, you run into this kind of, and it calls it an inflection point, where you need to change the way you think, or you might need to innovate. It just calls it an innovation loop. And so it says a closer look into the S-curve of business growth. And so if you look at the chart, it's just a series of S curves, right? It starts, and then it matures, and then it dies, and not dies, but then you fall off, and then you have to find another start point to start the next upward curve, right? You need to innovate to get to that next point. And in the chart, it says strategic inflection point. A strategic inflection points are those points in time where a company must make a fundamental shift to maintain or capitalize on forward momentum. And so there's a little elaboration of it. Whenever you reach the end of a maturity period, is that there's three things that can happen. One is you either enter obsolescence, which is, a fancy way of saying becoming obsolete, right? So it's a negative drop off from your maturity point, right? Your S curve, your maturity point just all of a sudden starts to dip. You forget you didn't innovate, and you just go downhill, right? if we were to use a business example, a good example would be like Blockbuster, right? They were maturing, right? They were scaling, maturing, and then suddenly they didn't innovate, and then Netflix came in and completely wiped them out of business. They went down. They didn't innovate, and they're no longer around with us, right? A secondary thing that can happen is you stagnate, right? You maintain that course and you stay that way, and this is a difficult thing, right, to maintain, because you don't innovate. You are on the verge of obsolescence. You're on the verge of becoming obsolete. And so that is also not what you want, right? Stagnating is also not what you want. Now, in terms of talking about stagnation, right? When you're talking about life goals, stagnating in that is if, let's just say, you maintain a good maturity level, it's not bad. It's not inherently bad, but you don't want to stay there too long, because if anything happens, snap, you lose your opportunity to find that next starting point to start the next S-curve growth. And so the third one is sustaining momentum, right? Sustained momentum, which you'll see on the graph. Sustained momentum makes it so that you find the next innovation, you jump onto that before you mature too long, or before you stagnate too long, or before you hit obsolescence, that you find the next start and you jump onto the next growth. Following the start, just like starting any kind of venture, you start really slow, right? You're learning the ropes, right? It's like almost as if you're not making any progress, and then like Doug said, suddenly you kind of hit this elbow, right? You hit this point where suddenly your growth is, after putting in the time, putting in the effort, putting in the consistent showing up, the consistency of showing up, suddenly you have this spike in growth. It just seems rocket all of a sudden, like you just take off. And that is what you want to take advantage of, is that's strategic growth, right? Over time, over many strategic curves, S curves that you take, eventually it's going to get higher. It's going to get higher. Those S curves are just going to keep pushing you higher. And that's what causes you to innovate, and that's what causes you to grow. So I'm going to skip over this stuff here. It talks about time and whatever. Here's an elaboration of that, right? Obsolescence, refuses to change equals no growth, right? And so there's this negative red that kind of starts to dip down, right? The trajectory of the maturation of wherever you're at starts to go downwards. And then you have this steady line, that's stagnation, right? And it says it chases tactics, right? And it equals dissonance, right? You're not growing, nor are you dying. You're kind of just stuck in this phase. You're refusing either way, and it's very neutral. And then you have sustained growth, which is sustained momentum, which is going upwards. You adapt and you innovate, and then which inevitably means that you are growing. And so, in talking about growth, right, the innovation loop, obviously this is different from what Doug said to us. Doug says that, at the top of the maturation level, you kind of jump, you got to take a leap of faith. And when you jump off. And I guess you could say that, right? Technically, you don't smooth transition from one thing to the other. There is going to be this leap off point where you kind of skydive off of or base jump off of the skyscraper, and you're trying to latch onto the next S curve before you hit the ground, right? And so obviously you got to be wise about this. For myself, let's just say, Noble Father, I, take a leap of faith and I jump off of this and I go into sewing, a business that does sewing. That is a very, very not smooth transition. To find the catch in the start of that, it would be you ideally want to catch a hold of a cliff edge before you land on the ground. You don't want to go beyond the point at which you started from, right? Obviously, a new start to something is going to be difficult, but ideally you want it to be a smooth one, right? And so this chart goes to talk about the innovation loop. And so if you look at this little curve here, right, S curve of growth, right, this is where scale is, and then you hit the crest of maturity, and then at the crest of maturity, after some time, it stagnates a little bit, and then it starts to go into obsolescence. This chart literally shows another S curve that starts to go back up at the lowest dip, right? It doesn't completely disconnect, and then you'll see it kind of like this eight maneuver. It's like an infinity sign if you look at it. And so whenever the dip of the maturity level comes down, it kind of enters into the lowest dip and it comes back over, but it rounds back around kind of like in this H shape. And this is what it's telling you of like how you do the innovation loop, is that you need to refine and it was talking about you need to refine your process, right? I don't know, there's nothing on this chart. Anyways, you need to refine what it is that you do. Okay, what is it that your business is into, or what is it about your life? You need to refine those things, right? You need to experiment, right? The next step is really to experiment with what is the next transition. What do I need to implement, experiment, and try a different tactic, a different look, a different opinion. And the next step is really to understand your audience, right? This is from the business from the perspective of business. And so the next step is really empathy. Empathy is really understanding what your clients or your customers think, what is it they're looking for, and what are the pain points that they have, and trying to solve those problems for them. And then when you got those answers, then you go to define what the thing is. What is the thing that we can do to serve those people? And then after that, you use those ideas to ideate and to find your way back onto that curve and ride the next high up towards your next S curve of growth. And so, yeah, they gave you the example of S curve business growth, adaptability, right? And again, you talked about Blockbuster, right? In 2000, whatever, Blockbuster hit a maturity and it started to dip. And then they didn't move on they didn't innovate at all. And Netflix starts to come in. So Netflix shows up, and suddenly they've taken all over the whole video business. And now they are on their path to being, this major provider of entertainment. And when you look at Blockbuster, their path of obsolescence just keeps going. And then in 2010, it completely died, and it's gone. So this is something that you need to think about for your own life as well, is like, in your life, where are you on the S curve of growth, right? For many people, I know many fathers out there who think that being the father is just the apex, and then they go to stagnate, and then they go to obsolescence. They stay at a job for too long. They keep doing a job that's not a fit for them. They're not utilizing any of their strengths. They're not seeking fulfillment in the work that they're doing. And they get to this place of stagnation and obsolescence, right? So you just imagine even the thought of not being a priority, right? Giving the crumbs only to yourself. You're giving all the best of yourself to your family and leaving nothing for yourself, leaving the fumes for yourself, leaving the crumbs for yourself, leaving the sloppy seconds and thirds and fourths for yourself, is that you leave nothing for yourself. And because you're the breadwinner and you're the leader of the family, that game plan is not a successful one. It's not a good one, actually. It's a noble one. Yeah. Should you give the best to your family? Absolutely. But you should give from a place of abundance rather than give from a place of nothing. If your cup is empty, you're not giving anything of value to your kids. And so you can talk about this for, let's just say addictions, right? Smoking, for example. Smoking is bad for the body, obviously. And what we don't see is like how much time that takes off at the end of life for our children, or for us to be present as fathers. If you want to see your grandkids, let's just say every single cigarette takes away 1 hour of your life at the end of the road. Would you say that being the best father you can be and wanting to provide for the best for your children, would that person keep smoking or quit smoking? Easy decision. Same for alcoholism, right? Let's just say you're taking off 1 hour off of your life at the end. A father who wants the best for their children, would they want to continue drinking or quit? Do the hard thing now and to quit. Business, work. Work is not fun. Work is not fulfilling for you. Your strengths are not being utilized. You feel like you have potential you have to maximize, and there's still room for more. There's more to life, right? You get that feeling in your gut that something isn't right, and that there is something for me. There's a place for me. You find yourself a square peg in a round hole, and that's not a fit for you. Do something about it, because your kids are watching you. You are an example to your children. Business, right? I've had this desire to want to run a business, right? Yes, the risk is scary. Yes, it might not work out. Yes, I don't have the money. But are you making the ends to do? Are you pursuing that dream? Your kids are watching you. They're watching you pursue your dreams. They're watching you to see what you do with your dreams. If your kid one day grows up to want to pursue their dreams, you better be sure that you have lived that life to not be a hypocrite to tell your kids that they should chase their dreams. You can tell them from a position of regret. I'm not saying you can't, but ideally, I hope that you'd be able to walk with them and say, hey, look, this is what I did whenever I encountered this issue, right? The premise of no regret. You get to the end of the road and you look back on your life, you look at these inflection points. I had a conversation with one of my brothers, actually. He's wanting to start this like cold plunging business out in Mexico. Hopefully I didn't break an NDA or anything. He didn't make me sign one, but it costs a lot of money. And it actually would cost him the savings that he's saved up. It's a risk, but he was not willing to get to the end of the road and look back on his journey and think, wow, that fork in the road, I should have taken it. Could you have been safe? Absolutely. And be okay with it? And would God take care of you? Absolutely. But if God was calling him to take this jump and he doesn't, and he looks back on his life and regrets it, you don't know what that time's going to be like. The same could be said about this 4Runner that we just purchased, right? Yes, driving electric is amazing. Cost is really, really low. But then we also have this beautiful backyard, right? I have these things I want to do with my kid, learn how to do mechanical issues with a car. I fixed a passenger window motor the other day, and I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know that I had the ability to do something like that. It wasn't a long fix. It took me to learn some stuff. It took me some research to get the right tools, to get the right parts to do it. And ultimately, I did it. Do I have any regrets about getting the vehicle? No. Are there things that are broken and things that need to be fixed on the vehicle? And is it a headache that I would want for anybody? Absolutely not. But I'm living with no regrets. I am enjoying the process. My son is learning something out of it. We're getting closer and we're bonding. My wife and I are on the same page. The finances of this purchase makes sense. The long-term vision of it makes sense. Will we be able to use it to spend time together as a family? Yes, absolutely. So we're checking off all these lists and living this life of no regrets. And I really want you to really think about it for your own life. What are you doing in your life? What are the fruits? And where are you on the S-curve of growth? Are you stagnating? Are you becoming obsolete? Right? And I think about fatherhood, and I think about why marriages out there are suffering and why families are breaking apart. You stagnate too long and you break apart, right? You take the cards that you've been given and you don't get creative about the plays that you can make. You're not growing in your development. You're eventually going to become obsolete, become stagnant, and eventually it will die. What you need to do is really innovate, find what is that next thing, always moving towards that next thing. Yeah, you might have a cushy job now, but the company at any point could just lay you off. Then you're off in the void. You're trying to find that next cliff edge. Ideally, you want to find the cliff edge. You want to take that leap of faith on your own terms rather than on somebody else's terms. And I highly recommend you to look at where you're at. Write it out, draw it out. X and Y axis, growth versus time, and just find yourself, where are you on that path? If you find yourself at a point where life is good, job is cushy, but not finding fulfillment, if there's anything even sticking out remotely, you really need to dig in. And I'd encourage you, right? Even if you don't know God, is to ask him. God loves you. God cares for you. God wants the best for you. And he says, even the birds of the air he feeds. So how much more for you, a son of God or a daughter of God, would he take care of? Ask him, Lord, what am I to do with this information? Where do you want me to go from here? Show me the path that I should go, because it is you that sets up things in front of us, and you created me for a specific reason. Everything that I've been given is exactly what I need to lead the kingdom that he has given to me and entrusted to me. And something that came up in our small group time, and I'm going to try to keep this short, is David, King David, before he was a king, was only a shepherd of sheep. If you asked him then, what is your realm? What is your kingdom? What are you in charge of? He'd just tell you, man, I just watch sheep. In reality, he was learning to listen and discern the voice of God. He was fighting off things like bears, lions, wolves, right, that would come attack his sheep. He was looking for lost sheep, taking care of the flock, watching them, overlooking them every single night, and choosing God, right? Choosing to listen to his voice. And when it came time for him to defeat Goliath, he had already conquered giants. He had already had faith in God. He already trusted in him that he was going to deliver him. He didn't need the armor of the king. He had everything he needed. God created him to be and face Goliath for that battle. And then later on, when he becomes the king of Israel, to be the king that the people need, the shepherd for the lost sheep. And it's so symbolic, right? But the work and the experience and the life that he'd lived up to that point, God had prepared him for. And I really want you to think about that for your own life. What has God walked you into? What has God walked you through? And how does God want to leverage that to make you succeed and to help other people succeed for his glory? That is ultimately our place in this life. And so that's really all I wanted to share today. I'm going to try to keep these short again. Gone almost 30 minutes. Don't forget, right, is that we're not promised tomorrow, right? You don't know when it's going to end. And so don't forget to be present. Slow down, be present, and stay noble. Until next time, bye for now.